Hey guys, this is Yoda. Figured I'd put out a little tier list update since we've had the chance to play with quite a few more specs on the PTR, especially the newly fixed VDH with new builds. I would say right now, VDH is definitely the best tank survivability wise and damage wise, so I'm putting it solo in the S tier. The only thing you're really missing is utility, which is kind of crazy considering Dragonflight Demon Hunter. Basically, you can't really help your healer that much other than with darkness, and you also can't immune certain tank mechanics, and you don't have grip, so it is missing that. But in terms of damage and survivability, I would say VDH is definitely a cut above the rest of the tanks. It's damage, survivability, and self-sustain, by the way. VDH does basically can play without a healer. I think it even maybe has better self-sustain. It's like the same level as Blood DK in terms of self-sustain. Speaking of utility, however, Paladin and Blood DK definitely still have really good utility. Paladin has all the utility that it had in Season 1. It does have slightly longer cooldown on Bubble and Spell Warding thanks to the nerf to Uther's Council. And also Tempered in Battle was slightly nerfed, but you can still get the one hit from Tempered in Battle, so things like Bubble Temper are still very strong. And obviously, you have 1 minute sack and into interrupts, etc. Blood DK has really good immunities that you can use to soak certain mechanics, and also grip is very, very useful in the new season, as it always is. Particularly, second boss of Motherload is a completely different boss with Blood DK since you have to grip the adds together and slow them, etc. As far as the other takes go, I would say Brew and Warrior are kind of on par damage-wise with these two, but they're missing the self-sustain or certain utilities that they have. Bear, I would say, has really good self-sustain and does bring Mark of the Wild. However, its personal damage is extremely low in Mythic Plus build as far as I've seen, so we're putting it in the B tier. For healers, I would say Disc Priest has kind of shown itself to be the best so far. Right now, healing is kind of like, first of all, can you meet the heal checks? So I would say all the healers can kind of do the heal checks that I've played with. I haven't played with Holy Paladin or Holy Priest, but Prez Evoker, Mistweaver, Druid, and Disc I've played with. All have kind of been able to make the heal checks. So that Prez Evoker kind of needs you to play around it a little bit. But Disc Priest goes above and beyond that. They can, on top of meeting the heal checks, they can also give you 5% stamina, Power Word Shield, and Lenience, and 2 charges of Pain Sup, which is way more mitigation than any other healer is capable of providing. So Disc is not only beating the heal checks for you, it's also beating the one-shot checks, and it's also like way easier for the tank because they just have additional free DR for fun, and 5% stamina if it's your only priest in the group. As far as Dominate Mind goes, we haven't really found anything super OP with it yet, but I'm sure something will pop up. Squirrels in Workshop were fixed, so quote unquote fixed, so you can no longer MC them. And we haven't found anything that crazy with MC so far, but I'm sure something will pop up later on. Our Druid had their tier set fixed. They still have quite a few bugs, but from what I can see, they are capable of making the heal checks, and they do bring Mark of the Wild, so we're putting them in the A tier. Mistweaver also looks pretty strong this season. They have very high damage. They can definitely make the heal checks, and they are also pretty good at one-shot checks, thanks to Cocoons and Dance of the Wind for themselves, putting them in the A tier, and that's where we're at for the healers. So for DPS, I would say Enhanced Shaman has kind of been the best so far that we've played with Totemic being the stronger build. I would say Totemic and Stormbringer are both good, with Stormbringer being kind of better on low target counts, and also if you're playing like on 2 minutes with PI and you're like pulling big with it, then Stormbringer is pretty good. However, there's quite a few pulls in the new season that are very, very large, and Stormbringer doesn't really deal with uncapped AoE as well as Totemic does. Totemic is like kind of bumping shoulders with the best of them, like Destrolock, BM Hunter are basically like on par with the Totemic Enhanced Shaman, while Totemic Shaman is also doing good on lower target counts and single target compared to those specs. I would say Totemic Enhanced Shaman is probably the best DPS right now. It also, provides your Lost and your Shaman buff, which is nice to have. Other S tier DPS, I'm gonna go talk about Augvoker later. I would say Mage is doing really good. They're basically doing like same level as Enhanced Shaman damage as is Shadow Priest, while having really good damage profile and providing great utility. Mage, Arcane Intellect, double AoE stop, immunities, Lust, etc. And Shadow Priest has very good damage profile. Also, they have the only remaining like AoE heal cooldown with Vampiric Embrace, with AG getting deleted from the game and Nature's Guidance being not nearly as strong. Vampiric Embrace is like the only thing in the game that basically has that effect right now. That alone, I would say, puts Shadow Priest pretty high up there. They're also performing really well damage-wise. The only thing is, if you put Shadow Priest and Disc Priest in the same group, like, no one can really interrupt, so I don't see them being played together. However, Shadow Priest having VE and the Priest utility is very good, so we're putting it in the S tier. Augvoker is kind of hard to tell how strong they are, since a lot of logs just straight up don't work. A lot of log hooks don't work with Augvoker. in certain classes. However, I'm inclined to just put them in the S tier since they still buff, you know, your most OP classes, whatever you're inviting is going to get buffed. And it's kind of nice to have someone in your group that's just willing to quote unquote lose DPS to go do jobs, which other DPS would maybe not be willing to do. Not quite sure where it'll end up with. I'm just putting it tentatively in the S tier for now. As far as the other DPS go, DPS balance actually seems very good this season. If a DPS is in the A tier instead of the S tier, it doesn't necessarily mean they're way worse. It just means they're missing like a little bit, I would say. For instance, like if you notice, all of the DPS in the S tier not only do superb damage, they also have insane utilities such as VE, shaman buffs / you know, all the totems they can bring plus mages. Classes in the A tier, I would say, are kind of doing similar or close damage, but they're just missing a little bit. For instance, BM Hunter obviously does crazy damage from what we've seen on the PTR. However, they're still a hunter, so you know their raid buff, Hunter's Mark, is completely laughable. And they also, I would say, other than that, they're pretty good. They have good AoE stops. They're somewhat okay defensively. Warlock, you know, has really high damage, but they're missing a raid buff. Imp Dispel, however, is quite useful in this season, so I would not be surprised to see Warlock played in a lot of high-end keys. As for the rest, you know, they're doing pretty good. Windwalker and Sub-Rogue in particular have been doing pretty well recently on the PTR. However, I would say Sub-Rogue is very hard to get a read on because right now their tier set is bugged in many ways. So the first most important bug is, I would say, winning streak is permanently at 10 stacks for the whole key as long as you don't die. So all of your finishers are just doing 10% or 30% more damage, I think. But there's also another bug where your tier set isn't buffing certain shadow and physical damage. So I would say it's very hard to get a read on Sub-Rogue right now, but I think it's overperforming. I don't really know for sure, but yeah, that's where we'll leave it. As far as the rest of the DPS go, I have not really had a chance to play with them, or it was like a really scuffed key or something. I'm not going to rate them yet. I'm just going to look down here. And that'll be it for the Tierlist update. Be sure to tune in. We're going to be streaming a lot of PTR in the coming weeks. And probably playing mostly tanks or Totemic Shaman. But yeah, thank you for watching. Peace out.